like, and make sure to engage in comments. Also share this video to your friends and story lovers, and click on the subscribe button on the screen to subscribe to Wundor Craft for more real horror stories like this. Valentine's Day had always been a big deal for me. Ever since I married Daniel, he made it his mission to give me the most romantic, memorable experiences every year. And this one was shaping up to be the best yet. The house smelled like roses and vanilla. Candles flickered across the dining table, reflecting off the expensive wine glasses he'd picked out just for the night. A 3-course meal, prepared with so much love, sat steaming on our plates. The man really outdid himself. "You like it?" Daniel grinned, watching me take in the beautiful setup. I shook my head in disbelief, a smile stretching across my face. "Like it? This is perfect." He leaned forward, his eyes twinkling. "You deserve it." We clinked our glasses together, savoring the moment. I wanted to freeze time and stay here forever, wrapped in warmth and love. Then the news came on. I wasn't paying much attention at first, too caught up in how lucky I was. But as Daniel poured more wine into my glass, his entire body stiffened. I followed his gaze to the TV, and that's when my stomach dropped. Breaking news. Convicted felon escapes maximum security prison. Police urge residents to stay indoors. A mugshot appeared on the screen. And just like that, I felt like I was suffocating. The man staring back at me from the TV screen had haunted my dreams for years. Those eyes, that smirk, I could never forget them. It was him, Alex, my ex, the one who nearly ruined my life. My hands started trembling, and I placed my wine glass down before I shattered it. Daniel looked at me, concern etched on his face. "Babe, you okay?" I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. "It's him," I whispered. "Daniel, it's him." His brows furrowed, but before he could ask, the news anchor continued. Authorities confirmed that Alex Caldwell escaped just hours ago and may be heading toward familiar locations. He's considered extremely dangerous. If seen, do not engage. Call 911 immediately. Familiar locations. I shot up from my chair, panic flooding every part of me. "We have to lock the doors." Daniel followed without hesitation. He didn't need the full story. He trusted me. We double-checked the locks, pulled the curtains shut, and turned off most of the lights. My hands still wouldn't stop shaking. Daniel grabbed them, his touch warm and reassuring. "Hey, I won't let anything happen to you. I promise." But promises don't mean much when your past is coming back to finish what it started. I sat frozen in the dim light, barely able to move, as every sound amplified the terror that was creeping in. The soft hum of the wind outside had transformed into an eerie, constant whisper, and the once familiar creak of our old wooden floors now sounded like the slow footsteps of an unseen predator. I clutched Daniel's hand, desperate for reassurance, even though the look in his eyes told me he was fighting his own battle with fear. Our sanctuary had turned into a trap, every shadow a reminder of the past we'd hoped was long buried. The phone rang again, shrill and insistent, and I fumbled to answer it despite my trembling fingers. The voice that greeted me was cold, distorted, so unmistakably Alex. "I'm coming for you, sweetheart," it sneered, and those words slithered into my mind like poison. I handed the phone to Daniel, whose jaw clenched as he listened. "I won't let him hurt us," he said, his voice low and determined, though I could see the fear lurking behind it. I tried to muster a reply, but my throat was dry and my voice caught in terror. Daniel quickly gathered anything he might use as a weapon: a heavy flashlight from the hallway, a kitchen knife left on the counter, and we huddled together in the living room. The candles flickered wildly, throwing twisted shadows on the walls that danced like specters. Every small sound, a drip of water, the distant rumble of a car passing by, became magnified, a ticking clock counting down to an inevitable confrontation. I could feel the sweat cold on my skin, my heart thudding in my ears as if it were trying to escape. Then came a slow, deliberate scraping at the back door. It wasn't the frantic sound of someone in a hurry. It was methodical, almost playful, as if the intruder was testing the strength of our makeshift barricade. My pulse raced, and I squeezed Daniel's hand tighter. He edged toward the window, peering out through a narrow gap in the curtains. His face went pale as he scanned the darkness. I could hear his quiet exhalations, each one laced with dread, and suddenly the sound of a low, heavy knock echoed from the front entrance, a knock that seemed to shake the very air around us. The knock wasn't a gentle tap, but a forceful slam, each time reverberating through the room with the weight of malicious intent. I sat there, barely daring to breathe, as Daniel's expression hardened with resolve. "Stay here," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper, yet carrying all the determination of someone who wouldn't give in. But I couldn't stay put. Every instinct screamed at me to run or hide, even though deep down I knew there was nowhere to go. The room felt smaller, suffocating in its confinement, as if it were a cell built to contain the nightmares of my past. The knocking grew louder, more insistent, until the door finally burst open with a crash that startled even the unyielding storm outside. Daniel lunged forward with the bat raised high, and I scrambled backward, my eyes wide with horror as I caught a glimpse of a dark silhouette invading our space. The intruder's face wasn't fully visible in the chaos, but his stance, his deliberate, predatory movements were unmistakable. In the blink of an eye, the calm that Daniel had tried so desperately to maintain shattered into a dozen frantic pieces. I heard the scuffle before I saw the details, the sound of a struggle, the clatter of a thrown object, and then an anguished cry that made my heart sink. Daniel had taken a blow. I rushed to his side, my voice trembling as I called his name, but he only grunted in pain, struggling to rise. Blood was seeping from a deep cut on his forehead, and his eyes were glassy with shock and pain. I could see the life ebbing away from him, and every second felt like an eternity, the realization of my worst nightmare setting in. My breath caught as I tried to steady him, whispering weak reassurances that sounded hollow even to my own ears. Then, as if the night hadn't already taken enough from us, I heard a slow, deliberate step behind me. I froze, my mind reeling, knowing that the figure had come for me. I dared not turn around, too terrified of facing the source of my anguish. But I couldn't escape the truth. The intruder was none other than Alex. A flash of candlelight revealed his twisted smile, his eyes burning with a wild intensity that made my blood run cold. He moved like a predator stalking its prey, his presence suffocating and relentless. "Hello," he whispered, his voice laced with a cruelty that made every nerve in my body tingle with dread. "Did you really think you could leave the past behind?" His words were a cruel reminder of everything I'd tried so hard to forget. I tried to plead with him, my voice barely audible above the pounding of my heart. Please, just go away, I begged, tears streaming down my face as I backed into a corner. But his laugh, soft yet laden with malice, cut through the silence. You left me no choice, he said, as if he were speaking not just to me, but to some long-held grievance that had festered over the years. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was trapped, locked inside my own home, as Alex circled me slowly, a predator savoring the moment before the final strike. I could see the glint of determination in his eyes, the cold, unyielding look that promised nothing but pain. His shadow stretched out on the wall, merging with the darkness, making it hard to tell where he ended and the night began. With each step he took, the candlelight flickered violently, casting eerie shapes that made the room feel as though it were closing in on me. I reached out desperately for something, anything to use as a weapon, but my hands were shaking so violently that I could barely grasp the small objects around me. I glanced at Daniel, lying on the floor, his life hanging by a thread, and I felt a surge of anger and helplessness. Alex's presence was a cruel twist of fate, a bitter reminder that my past, no matter how hard I tried, would never let me go. He leaned in close, his breath cold against my cheek, and whispered those fateful words again. You never had a choice. My mind was racing, each thought a jumbled mix of horror and regret. I could hear the distant wail of sirens, a promise of help that felt painfully inadequate in the face of such relentless evil. The sound of approaching footsteps from another part of the house brought a brief flicker of hope, only to be crushed by the reality that Alex wasn't finished yet. The police might arrive, but I could already feel that nothing could undo the damage that had been done, that nothing could bring Daniel back. I tried to move, to find a safe space or a hiding spot, but every route was blocked by debris or locked doors. The heavy atmosphere pressed in on me from all sides as I staggered toward a closet, thinking perhaps I could hide among the coats and boxes, but the closet door wouldn't budge under the weight of my terror. Alex's footsteps grew louder, more deliberate, as he moved further into the room. I could hear his soft chuckle, a sound that seemed to reverberate off the walls, each note carrying the promise of more pain to come. In the midst of the chaos, my mind flashed back to memories of the past, those long, agonizing hours when I had been forced to endure Alex's manipulations. I remembered how powerless I had felt, how his presence had always loomed over every moment of my life like a dark cloud. Now, here he was, not as a distant memory, but as a living, breathing nightmare, determined to reclaim control over everything I held dear. The sense of dread was overwhelming, as if the entire universe had conspired to drag me back into that hellish chapter of my life. Alex's voice cut through my thoughts, low and menacing. You thought you could hide behind a new life, didn't you? He taunted, circling me like a shark in turbulent waters. I wanted to scream, to beg for mercy, but my voice was lost in the terror that had gripped me. Every instinct told me to run, yet every exit was sealed. I could only stand there, paralyzed, as the nightmare unfolded before my eyes. His cold, unwavering stare made it impossible to focus on anything else. My pain, my fear, the loss of the man I loved, all merged into a single blinding moment of terror. In that dreadful silence, broken only by the erratic pounding of my heart and the relentless tapping of rain against the windows, I realized that nothing could prepare me for the horror of that night. The police sirens, now drawing near, were a distant promise of salvation, one that might come too late to reverse the cruel fate that Alex had set in motion. As he took another step forward, I knew that my life was being irreversibly altered, that the scars of this night would remain etched in my soul long after the storm had passed. I pressed my back against the wall, every muscle in my body screaming for escape, while Alex's taunts continued to echo in the confined space. "You never had a choice," he repeated, his voice dripping with venom, and I could almost feel the cold, final grip of despair tightening around me. In that instant, I realized that nothing in my life, from the cherished memories of happier times to the small moments of love and hope, could shield me from this impending darkness. I was at the mercy of a man who had been fueled by hatred for far too long. Time lost all meaning as I teetered on the edge between terror and numbness. The confrontation that had started with a violent intrusion had morphed into a psychological battle, one in which every word, every movement, carried the weight of a decade of pent-up rage and pain. I wanted to scream out for help, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed each of Alex's words. I clutched the edge of a battered table, the only piece of furniture left standing, as I tried to anchor myself in a reality that was rapidly slipping away. Then, as if in a cruel twist of fate, a sharp sound, like glass shattering, echoed through the room, and a part of me flinched in hope that this might be the turning point. But the hope was short-lived. In the chaos, Alex's eyes flashed with a brutal determination, and in that split second, I saw something that made my blood run cold.